Hello, my name is David Ferguson.
And I'm Sean Patterson, and we are the directors of Rewired Consulting.
We would like to welcome you to the Rewired Consultant podcast featuring guests from across the IT industry.
We will be talking to technology leaders from all over New Zealand, providing unique insight and good chat with the people on the front line of innovation and transformation.
This series will give you a great opportunity to hear the stories of the people involved and create the strategy and vision for some of New Zealand's most interesting businesses.
This episode is powered by smartspace.ai, the secure, scalable enterprise AI platform that transforms your AI capabilities without compromising security or control. Generic AI tools expose your data to unnecessary risk. Smartspace.ai deploys securely within your own Azure environment in an hour, accelerating AI adoption. Smartspace.ai simplifies enterprise AI solutions, cutting implementation costs by up to 90%, starting from $400 a month and deploy in minutes. Ready to lead your organization's AI transformation with confidence? Visit smartspace.ai/rewired for a special offer for Rewired Consulting podcast listeners. Smartspace.ai, secure, scalable AI that grows with your ambition.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Rewired Consultant podcast with myself, Sean Patterson, and co-host David Ferguson. And today on the Rewired podcast, we're delighted to be joined by Graeme Jackson, who's the General Manager of Data and Analytics at Vector, New Zealand's largest distributor of electricity and gas. Originally from Scotland, Graeme made the move to New Zealand back in 2020. Graeme is an experienced data, analytics and AI expert with significant experience across the energy and utilities sector. Graeme has deep functional and technical expertise in data transformation, data governance and management, advanced analytics, AI, and deep learning. As a data veteran, Graeme delivers both the technical and non-technical parts to all transformations. Graeme holds a Master of Science from the UCL, where he specialised in machine learning, and a Masters of Engineering from the University of Strathclyde. Today we'll talk to Graeme around his career to date, his passion for data analytics and how it is evolving in New Zealand, what he sees the future of technology looking like, and the type of work that might become more prevalent as businesses adopt the work of AI. So, Graeme, welcome to the Rewired Consultant podcast. How are you doing?
My one introduction, I'll take that any day. That was fantastic. Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Sean, and I'm good, David. I really appreciate this time, mate. Big kudos to you guys for what you're doing here, and it's a pleasure just to be on board with this and having this discussion. So yeah, awesome to be here, mate.
Good stuff, man. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on as a fellow Scotsman. So I think, look, we always kind of like to, I guess, kick off with how our guest maybe got into maybe the IT industry, or how specifically around your kind of experience with data and analytics. So do you want to just take us back a little bit and tell us how that all came about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to get us off, I was probably never really supposed to be in this industry at all, if I'm going to be honest. I'd applied when I was 16 back in Scotland. You got to apply for university at that point, and kind of 16 into 17, and I applied to go and do architecture. So I was going to be a creative architect. I was going to go down building houses and designing houses and all of this. So this IT industry sort of just kind of happened to me rather than me sort of choosing it, if I'm honest. So yeah, pretty cool experience. Like when I was just young, went through school, was going to go to architecture and do architecture in Glasgow, and then I had a physics teacher who sort of just stopped me one day and said, "Here, Graeme, I've heard you're off to do this. You're pretty good at the old maths and the physics and whatever. I actually think it'd be a really good idea for you to get into engineering." And fundamentally that just overnight changed my complete projection in life and everything that I was doing. So yeah, so I kind of got into IT through electrical engineering. It's fundamentally my route. Yeah, so do you want me to go into that story? Do you want us to keep going?
Yeah. It's just funny you say that, Graeme, because the amount of times that we speak to people, or even myself, when I went to University of Edinburgh and I went there to study to be a PE teacher. And so, but again, when I was like 16, 17, when you're kind of, and you don't really know what you want to be doing. You don't really know about the world or where you're going to go. So it's just funny how like you go on a completely different tangent, and the amount of people who do go on a different tangent, later down the line seems as though everyone we speak to is in the same boat.
Like 100%, yeah. And I can sort of go through the journey of it, but fundamentally, it wasn't until I got to about the age of, I reckon I was about 25 when I sort of sat down, and that was now probably what am I now, 34. So that was 9 years ago, sat down and said, I'm going to make a strategic decision here to go basically all in on the topic of data. So,
Yeah.
but before that, it was just not that. And I think that's so true, Sean, what you're saying. A lot of people in my teams, a lot of people that I hire, a lot of people that I discuss don't originate in this background at all and have just ended up coming this way. But yeah, so the story goes, basically I went to Strathclyde Uni in Glasgow for electrical engineering and just had the most amazing time there. Like really, really enjoyed the degree, loved engineering, really loved the topic, loved the discipline. And it's interesting because, we learned how to code there. I did a bunch of C++, bunch of Java, learned all the sort of computer science traits, but fundamentally that degree was just completely about system design, controls, probably more logic, if I'm honest. Like the whole degree, like if you look at every class, it kind of just focused back on this topic of logic and understanding that. And then I came out the back of that and didn't really know what my journey was going to look like, didn't really know where to go. But David, conscious you're from across the water, but in Scotland specifically, like we very much, if you come out of an engineering degree, you're probably going into one or two things. You're going into one of the big grad programs with, at the time it was like Jaguar and Land Rover, or down into one of these things, or your National Grid had a fantastic program. But the other big thing was that a lot of people were going into oil and gas. It was the heyday. It was $140 a barrel heyday. So I jumped on that train and headed up into Aberdeen and joined a graduate program with the company Maersk at the time. So AP Miller Maersk, the big ship container company, they had a phenomenal oil and gas sector to their business. And I joined an electrical engineering graduate sort of, I guess it was a program associated to that, but I went in as a control systems engineer. So it was this perfect blend of education and what I'd come from into industry. And had this nearly 4 years there on potentially what I would deem as one of the best grad programs you could have out there. It was an international program. So we did, it was, the first 8 months were spent in what was deemed as your home base, which was Aberdeen for me. And then basically 2 blocks after that, 2 next 8 months, and you got to choose globally where you want to go. So I spent 8 months over in Denmark, in Copenhagen, working in the drilling side of the business. And then I ended up 8 months out in the Middle East, working in Qatar and one of the biggest oil fields in the world. So for me, that graduate program was just this absolute explosion into the topic of engineering, but very much into technology. Yeah. And then, and it was specifically when I was in the Middle East, like I just, we can talk about it all day, but the topic of technology in the Middle East is just unbelievable. The amount of investment they're putting in. Saudi Arabia just now is just forking money left, right, and centre into the topic of AI. And at the time, like we were building with Maersk a whole complete digital twin for our oil rigs out in the middle of the Al Shaheen field, which was the Qatari oil field.
When was this, Graeme? What year?
This would have been, show me this been. This would have been like 2016. So hang on, 2016 into 2017, something about that time, probably.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And we were just in a lot of my job throughout that graduate program. I spent half the time onshore in the offices, and then the other half I was out on the oil rigs. So it was just this amazing experience. Yeah. And I guess my career there sort of it really opened the door, specifically when I was in the Middle East, to the topic of data and what that was going to do for an industry that was built in the 1970s, right? And then I came back to Aberdeen after that, and I spent about another year with Maersk. And it was at that point I made that conscious decision to just jump full speed into the topic of data. So ended up down in London shortly after that at UCL to do another master's. I had my master's in electrical engineering, and then going back to do another master's at the age of 26 or something was quite a big deal, because you're sort of established yourself, and you think, but you got to play your cards and you got to make gut feelings, and you do it when you do it. And I jumped down there and did a degree in analytics with management, where I just solely focused on fundamentally machine learning and what that was going to do, and how that concept of like predictive based stuff could really make huge impact on business. And I did that for a year, and then ended up in consultancy shortly after that. And then when I was in London, I met my now wife, who, I don't know if you boys are the same, but, Kiwi girl, met her down in Clapham, very traditional overseas experience from New Zealand. And I met her, and one day she sort of woke up and said, "Here, I think I want to go back to New Zealand." And I said, "Well, let's just do it." Fundamentally, I thought, I like her, so I'm going to jump on the train here as well, right? And and then ended up over here 5 years ago, and have continued to navigate that consultancy career over that period of time. And New Zealand is just a phenomenal place for innovation. I think, like, has to be something built into, like, the true, almost like, I don't know if it's origins, but like the sort of, like, just into the foundations of the country, like, just they work, I don't know, something in that. And we've had a couple of amazing unicorn businesses jump out the back in New Zealand. Zero was one of them that happened. And anyway, and just had an amazing career over the past 4 years in consultancy in this topic, and then now gone full time into the CDB. So
nice.
Yeah, a bit of a journey there, but the focus has just fundamentally always remained for me about the interconnection between the tech side of the world and the business side. Like, you can't speak about them differently, and I kind of always just hung my hat on that. And that's fundamentally it. Yeah.
Nice, Graeme. So look, obviously making the move to New Zealand, you obviously didn't want to lose your missus, so you were like, right, I'm coming with you. The other side of it is you'd started to build that consultant career in the UK, and obviously you'd found what your passion was going to be. Was there any sort of concerns in moving? Because obviously you wouldn't have known about New Zealand too much in terms of, like, the working life and all that sort of stuff before you moved over. But was there any sort of concerns inside, thinking, am I walking away from a really important part of my career? Or was it more like, this could be a really, really exciting new chapter? Or what was the feelings as you made that move?
100%. Like, I mean, I think, again, like, when I decided to do data, I was very conscious about where I was going to get, do that. I hung my hat on, well, if I'm going to do data, I need to be educated in it. So I was going to a university. Yeah. I then thought, what's the best university I could get into? And UCL at the time is, and I think it might still be, it's top 10 in the world just now. And I thought, you can't get any, may as well jump on that train. So basically went to London, really good university, got as much out of it as possible. I was in the middle of this absolute hub of London, which, if you guys have ever lived there, and I don't know if you have, but it's just unbelievable amount of opportunity can come knocking on your door, and you need to put your foot forward because the competition is just so high. And the caliber of people is unbelievable in London who are doing some of these things. So I think that was another conscious move. And then when Ruby, my wife, said, let's go to New Zealand and let's think about that. And David, I had no idea what this country, I had no idea what I was coming in for. But again, you sort of think, well, hang on a minute here. I'm in this, like, amazing place, and I'm learning lots in London. And maybe I can just take that learning and do something in New Zealand, and we'll give it a go. And it's just been absolutely phenomenal for my career, professionally, to be here. And so, Dave, I had no clue what I was getting myself involved in.
I think you said as well, Graeme, to us that you landed in New Zealand at probably the worst time you could have, right? Was it around beginning of 2020 when COVID was just about to hit?
I can't remember. I honestly can't remember if I flew over New Year. So I took off in Scotland in December, and I don't know if I landed in the January, but maybe I landed in the 31st of December. It was, like, right on it. And then I was here for a month, 2 months, and then Jacinda called the first lockdown, and then that was COVID, and I had no mates. I mean, boys, I wish I knew you then. I had no mates, right? And
we couldn't even go out for a beer anyway, Graeme, so it wouldn't have mattered.
I know. Yeah, we could have played that quiz game. We could have done that. But kind of like no network, didn't really know anybody, and literally apart from my now wife and her family, and they took me in with open arm, amazing. But the experience, like, to give an example on how that flipped in its head as well, is I say that, and I do miss going to the pub, and I miss the boys from back home. Of course I do. But I think you just need to be a wee bit of you just need to put your foot forward, and people really welcome you in this country. And the amount of people who are open for a discussion and a coffee is fantastic. So it wasn't
we find that as well, Graeme, because it's like we've been running this business about coming up to 4 years now, and we'd worked for big global recruitment businesses in the past, but the welcoming side of thing and how easy it is to get in front of people and how people actually appreciate you for the individual as opposed to working for a big name meant that we were
Right.
confident that we could go out by ourselves and do well. Whereas if it had been a Dublin or a London or thing, it'd be very, very difficult to go out by yourself and get that traction against a lot of the bigger players. So that thing, as
Yeah.
you said, New Zealand's great for people who like relationships and like getting out and meeting people because they welcome you if you make that effort with them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like, to give an example, so when I came over here, I was, went pretty hard in the January time. Even though a lot of places are shut, went pretty hard to make connections and try and land a job because I didn't have one. And it kind of was, I'd been in discussion in the UK while I was making this move over and setting things up. And anyway, I ended up getting a couple of job offers from some of the big four, etc. And the minute COVID hit, they pulled the contract, they pulled it away, and I'm sort of sitting back going, I'm literally looking at my savings account and I'm thinking about, this is a disaster, right?
Yeah.
But to talk about that whole idea of if you just put your foot forward, it gets you somewhere. I ended up having a connection with a lady who ran a recruitment business. Obviously, everything shut down. Everyone went on hiring freezes. You boys will probably know recruitment was tough then, right?
Mm.
She then said to me, well, here, I don't have a job, but I've got a mate who has a company and she's going to sell this company, but she might want someone to come and help her with that. So anyway, this kind of connection goes along, and anyway, I meet this phenomenal woman, Belinda Johnston, phenomenal woman, and she said, here, Graeme, I don't have a job. I don't have a title. I've got nothing. But here's money, here's a salary, come in for 6 months and fundamentally help me sell the business. And that was my first job in this country. And again, going from being in data, real deep tech data, going through that consultancy, understanding the business, I basically came in and fundamentally said, well, how do we establish a stronger servicing? How do we really build a data team? How do we look at packaging your business for a really successful sale? And basically we ended up selling the company 6 months later. She sold the company. I was just in the background, but she sold the company 6 months later. And then that next person who bought the company said, Graeme, stay on and build the data team. We don't have a data team. So it's just all about...
Did you manage to negotiate any equity for that 6 months?
See, if I'm honest, I just wanted like a couple of $100 just to get by. I was not thinking. Nah, I wish, but she was a phenomenal lady, and just like that was just literally my entry into New Zealand. And I think that would have been a wee bit different if COVID hadn't come. I think there was more opportunity, but it just is what it is. But yeah, I've been very, very lucky with that, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and you find like New Zealand in terms of the working environment, because it is different. It definitely is different. There's a different sort of mindset to how you work and the way people work. How did you find that initially? Did you find any challenges with it, or were you able to adapt quite easily?
That's a great question, because there's no right or wrong in this. This is just my experience. You come from London. I was in consultancy. I was working long hours. 40-hour work weeks weren't a thing. You were burning the candle in both ends. It was a significant amount of time. And then you came here in like January, even at that point, everyone goes to the beach, everyone goes to their holiday home. It's pretty chilled out. And then it's kind of this mentality of a really strong work-life balance. And I truly love it. It works really well for my personality and the way I function. But I went literally from 70, 80 hours a week down to do 40 and go and enjoy the beach. And so it was a bit of a culture shock, if I'm honest, but a fantastic, I think it's a fantastic way of being, and that's fundamentally stayed with me as well over the past 4 or 5 years now, yeah.
Brilliant.
Big
Good
difference.
stuff. And then that role led on to, because you said, so Fusion acquired Mindful, yeah?
You got it, yeah. So Fusion 5, yeah. So Fusion 5 acquired Mindful at that time. And again, I was starting to feel like I was coming off the keyboard. I wasn't doing much coding when I was at Mindful at all. I was very much more focused on strategy and governance of data. So I was getting a lot more focused on that side of things. And then when I went into Fusion 5, we carried the team across. So there was a few of us there, really. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 of us. And over a 2.5 year period, 2.5 year period, I built out the company, built out the data and analytics function to what it was at the time when I left, which maybe exceeded about 30 odd people. So we built that out to cover everything from engineering, analytics, governance, strategy, advanced analytics, sort of all capabilities within the topic. And the card that I really wanted to play there is that there's no piece of work that just requires a single capability for data.
Yeah.
You need everything coming together, and you need really a full end-to-end team, and that requires a lot more than just a singular data engineer or a singular data scientist or something. So yeah, we just really focused on building out that team, and I mean the market as well at that time was really interesting, because in this country, if people listen to this that aren't in New Zealand, like, the country's quite unique in a way. I think there's about maybe, I'm directionally stating this, but about 50 organizations that really are enterprise, that sort of run the country, outside of the public sector. And then you have, I don't know, maybe you guys know the amount, but you probably have about 80 to 90% of businesses in this country would be deemed as small to medium. So anything that under sort of the 50 mil revenue mark or 80 mil revenue mark or something. And so that, but these guys want to be in contention. They want to be playing some serious games. They want international exposure over into Australia. They want to expand, So there was huge data and analytics opportunities within that really in that medium range. Yeah. So the clientele that we really focused on when I was at Fusion 5, I would say we're more in medium. Definitely we ventured into the top 50 or whatever, but yeah, fundamentally that sort of area, yeah.
Did you think that... Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask, well, obviously with working in sort of consultancy businesses and stuff, and working with different businesses, different industries, different size of businesses, did you feel as though that businesses in New Zealand were putting enough emphasis on the data side of things? Because it seems to have got more and more prevalent in recent years than it has been.
Yeah, I it definitely has. I mean, the light of all the technology advancements now, every business unit now really depends on data, and so now it's huge. But at that time, there was definitely the demand for it. The demand, I felt there was a big movement probably back in maybe 3 or 4 years ago that was around, I can always call that a singular view of the company. We wanted that sort of, we had teams working in silos. We had data supporting this area of the business and that area of the business, but we never really had a central view of the business. Yeah. And I think at that point, especially post-COVID, people are really holding on to, the straps of the business and saying, well, how do we take the business forward? They're not talking about a single business unit, or they're not talking, and as a result to that, the data discussion fell very heavy around an enterprise view of the business, yeah. And then obviously with COVID, it put a huge spanner on a huge sort of ignition under cloud as well. Yeah. So everyone was moving cloud at that point, and we're probably a wee bit behind the times on that. I felt like coming from London, everyone was there already, it kind of felt, and then you came here and it was a bit behind, but there was a huge move around. Move into the cloud, enterprise view, putting analytics or self-service to the masses. It was these sort of discussion points that were coming up, and now we're seeing maybe a wee bit different, and I can talk about that, but that was really happening at the time. And I think that fundamentally ignited the success of a lot of data consultancies, 3-4 years ago. So that was the big driver, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The role of PwC, did they come looking for you? Did they hear about you on the market, or how did that come about?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Maybe I was just standing about with my CV or something. But yeah, there was a couple of big things. Like, New Zealand's just a phenomenal place for technology and the uplift of that. And at the time, there was a big move happening with a couple of big programs of work going about, and I'd had the exposure with Mindful and with Fusion 5 on really that medium size business. And I'd never really had much exposure into the government side. I really wanted to truly understand the public side of the country. So ended up over in PwC, got in there and spent maybe just under 2 years there, or a year and a half or something there. And that was amazing as well, because you're now in a big, powerful engine, right? You're in the big
Yeah.
PwC tower, right in the heart of the city, and you're dealing with amazing people there, and you've got lots of different capabilities kicking about there. And it was that again was a great learning experience, very different to what I'd had
Yeah.
up until this point in this country. And again, it was a bit of a strategic move to move in there because I wanted that exposure. And then when we talk about the exposure to delivery there, like that really lit the fire under what I was capable of as well, because we were getting big programs. I was focusing big strategy. I was sitting across people who were really capable in their own topics, like, for example, management consultants who were really capable in strategy and operations.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the other side with the assurance team, and they're really capable of looking at risk assurance and all this stuff. And so you're starting to open the door to a lot more again. And yeah, and that was about a year and a half, nearly 2 years, where I just really got involved in that organization. And again, a great time. It really started to come off the tools again on that, and really get into more of a executive sort of leadership, senior management sort of level of discussion, which, and I think in the tech scene, I think you need to watch on that as well, because, and I was speaking to a guy about this recently, like you could have, you could be in the industry 10 years, you could be in data for 10 years, and you could be an incredibly good technical data specialist. But I think what happens is when you go through that tenure in your professional career, you get moved into management, you then
Yeah.
go into senior management. And I was like, I saw something online. Yeah, but what I was saying, there is that sort of projection through your career, especially in this topic. And you can become really good technically, and then you sort of get to this point where they move you into management, they move you into leadership, and the capability that you carry in those are very different to that of what you've fundamentally been trained on and you've been delivering in the past amount of time. So when I was at PwC, it really opened my capabilities to something different again. And but I think that's something that the industry needs to be conscious of as well, is that
Just on
you
that,
promote.
Graham. Yeah, just on that. It's like you've said you're 34, so you're very young to be where you are in your career. You know what I mean? So that role at PwC, you were knocking on 30. Like, so it was quite a senior role
Yeah.
for someone of that age group. Did you find? And it's just like at that age, did you find, like, in terms of like when you were in room with, like, was there a mix of ranges in terms of people being like a lot more experienced in their career, a lot sort of longer in the game and stuff like that? And were they welcoming? Did they take on your thing very, like, how did the dynamics of that work? Because I just think when you said 34, I was like, wow, you're super young, like, for where you've got.
Yeah. It's funny because people say that to me, and I sit in meeting rooms and they'll be like, we'll all have a good joke at how young Graeme is in the meeting. And I'm like, and I laugh at it and I'm like, this is brilliant, but
Yeah,
I don't know. I just think, like, I guess this is this is the future. This is what I see happening, and I'm constantly chasing that, right? It's like, this world of data and analytics and the topic of AI, it's not sort of we're not causing it to happen in this business. It's everyone else. It's happening around us to the business.
yeah,
And what that means is the discussions that take place are very much at core business principles 101. Are we making a return on investment in this stuff? Are we seeing significant value uplift throughout the business? Are we, and these sort of questions, and they're not asking you about what data architecture, what data model do we have in play? Have we modeled that data? Have we got the right facts and dimensions of that data? It's nothing about the data.
yeah,
It then spirals into fundamentally, if we're moving towards this future, what does it mean for the business? And I think, like, the big move for me to go to London and do that focus on analytics, I was really conscious to do it with management, because
yeah,
I knew that discussion was going to be happening. I knew that's what was going to be going on. And I think I've just really anchored on that and said, I'm
yeah,
going to have more business discussions about it. And I guess, from a leveling perspective, yeah, I'm pretty young to be in the level that
yeah,
I'm absolutely. But I think it's just about having that complete commercial awareness of all of this, and truly understanding that the businesses that I've worked in and are they fundamentally have to move this way. And
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's just about putting your foot forward again. And I felt that's been really successful for me, but I've probably done that subconsciously rather than
Yeah.
consciously, if I'm honest. But yeah, some people do laugh at that, but I'm very welcoming to the fact that I'm 34 and I get a seat at some really high powered tables, I'll welcome that any day, yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us, obviously, with you've been in the role for almost a couple of years at Vector, Graeme, and you were building out the strategy for them, right? And then they then brought you on board to kind of to implement, right? Is that how it kind of transpired?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I guess the job's actually quite new in a way. Like I started working for this organization, about a year and a half ago now. So it was last January, and that was in a consultancy format. I was brought in to fundamentally write the strategy for the business for data, and really look across the distribution and look across the organization and say, how do we need to push this towards the future of the energy sector? I did that. We then worked our way through the strategy, and the opportunity lay on the table to come in and really embed that and mature the business in the topic of data analytics and AI. So I just marrying that back to my times when I was sitting in the oil rigs, and I was in the oil and gas game, focusing on the energy sector in a different light. But now thinking about it from this light, it just really felt like a kind of 360. I'd come back round on where I started, and it made a lot of sense to me. So it's quite cool. I jump into discussions just now, and we'll talk about, we'll be talking about, real analytical based stuff, but we'll also be talking about the phasing of the power and the quality and all the metrics. And I'm thinking far out. Yeah, I remember working on that when I was an engineer, So it's quite nice to bring the two worlds together. Yeah. So and I think that was the big opportunity again, is it's really hard to tie strategy to execution. And I think there's always a subconscious block in the mind to say that we write a document, we write a strategy, okay, we have a nice roadmap that someone's documented, but then what?
Yeah.
And it's really hard to navigate that bridge in organizations, and the bigger the organization, I actually think the more difficult it becomes. But yeah, just really focusing now on the execution of that strategy and ensuring that we are continuously to look into the future, but being tactical and creating value sooner than what maybe a 3-year roadmap or 4-year plan looks like,
Nice.
So.
That's interesting, because you talk about because obviously you work coming from the consultancy side. You've obviously worked with lots of businesses, looked at their strategies, and then you've obviously proposed what way to do that. And then that's when you see when the business has real appetite, when they see what's involved, what the cost is, and what people are willing to put to it. So I'm assuming, obviously, with this role, obviously, like there must be massive appetite to actually focus on this in the right way for you to actually then come on board and actually do it. Because I'd say, coming from the other side, you've probably seen the people that have sort of got nervous when they've actually said, well, this is what we need to do and how to do it.
Mate, 100%. And I think as well, David, like when I sit in my chair and I look back to the strategy document that I created, the consultants are real good at PowerPoints, by the way. Like they're really good, right? Really good at three things: Excel, PowerPoints, and whiteboards. Like we can draw anything on whiteboard, right? So, when I look back at that strategy and I look back at the fundamentals on how I built that, it brings me a lot of validity because I still stay true to that as well. There's nothing I would really, there's small things I would tweak now knowing the business better, but I feel like my strategy remains true, and it is the right sort of vision and direction we need to take the business. So it's given me a lot of validation that my consultancy career wasn't built on hopes and dreams, but it was actually true, So I'm fine with that. Yeah,
You can go back to it then. That's the thing. You can say, look, this is a perfect case where it worked.
yeah. But it's amazing now. Like if I just talk about really the data world, I think it's so important to address that because, the way we built a team 3 years ago with those perfect capabilities, that I mentioned, that sort of the Fusion 5, sort of how I designed a team to service the market. I look now at the hires that we're looking to hire in the near future, and literally those capabilities did not exist. We didn't know what they were about. We had no clue that was a role, and that has been the coolest thing about being in this industry, is that it's changing so quickly, and And we're just seeing advancements come from the US, from the Bay out in Silicon Valley, and we're seeing stuff come out from all the big players there every day. We're seeing companies spin up out of absolutely nowhere around this topic that are offering amazing SaaS-based products that we can lean on. And just there's so much cool stuff coming. And then we're looking for capability of personnel that, back 3-4 years ago, we would have said, oh, they're the soft skills, we need the techie stuff, we need the hard skills, we need the coders, and now we're looking and saying, we want to absolutely continue to elevate the coding and the tech side. But the big thing in the future for me is we need to lean in on, the topic of ethics and governance. That's going to get more and more light. We need to lean in on how do we deploy these really advanced models into production and really into enterprise deployment. So that requires us to have a unique skill set in engineering. It requires us to have a more product mindset. It requires us to have greater focus on change, adoption. These are sort of, for me, the skills of the future. It's like truly understanding the use of this stuff. So it's super cool just to see that transition. And I think that's just such a learning point that that's not 10 years. That's like, we're talking 2-3 years ago. We didn't really know this was the case, So, yeah.
Graeme, can I ask a question around, you've spoken around, obviously, with the businesses you've worked with and Vector hiring and building a team and stuff like that. And look, given what me and David do, we speak to job seekers all the time. There's going to be people listening to this and watching this who are job seekers. There could be data engineers. And we know how competitive a market is in New Zealand with, so many people out there. And can you give a bit of insight into your opinion, how people can try and get ahead of the game or ahead of other maybe applicants when they manage to get an interview? Because it's all well and good, on paper, having the right skill set or the right technical for what you're looking for. But is there anything else that you would say that someone can do or, that can help someone nail an interview? What are the key things that you look for when you're speaking to someone?
That's a great question, Sean, because I see lots of people on LinkedIn and people message me all the time and say, I'm certified in all this stuff. And I mean, it's unbelievable how many certifications people now have around this topic, which is really good because they know their technical stuff, which is fantastic. Okay. But for me, like the skill set's changing, right? So if someone came to an interview with me, the things that I'm really looking for are, have they got this mindset to really challenge the status quo? Like, are they actually thinking about new ways of doing things, or are they just really telling you that they know these frameworks and processes? I want someone to literally tell me what's the biggest problem they've solved, either in their professional or personal life, and how did you do it? How did you go about that? And the other thing that I think the accessibility, I'm not going to sit here and fly the flag for like entrepreneurship and stuff. It doesn't work for everyone. That's another discussion. But people who are coming to me saying, here, Graeme, I started this thing and we did X, Y, and Z and we managed to get it into the market, or we put it into our business, and it's a real entrepreneurial sort of mindset about really taking ownership and driving it forward. That to me is the big skill sets that I'm just absolutely crying out for. I would love people to come to the table with that. And do you know what's interesting actually? And maybe you guys, I don't know if you guys work with more junior levels in recruitment, but I have been blown away recently with some people who've come to me around those graduate programs and junior programs. Like some of the stuff these people are doing are unbelievable, truly unbelievable. Like I had a guy recently come to me and I said, give me an example. Like, what problem are you trying to solve? And he said, oh, well, spun up this company last year as with a mate from uni, and we're fundamentally trying to solve the problem of aircrafts not being able to land at airports around the world due to fog on the tarmac. Wow. And I'm thinking,
big problem.
Big problem, right? Yeah. And he's like, yeah, we're building out these models, we're building out these predictions, we're looking at how we partner with different sort of lots of like chemical stuff around the world, like chemical organizations around the world, and and looking at how we can do prototypes on this in a couple of different places. And I'm honestly like, mate, you're 21, 22, you're trying to solve a problem that fundamentally on the transport industry will be billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And this young guy's like, yeah, I think I have a solution for that.
Oh,
And these are the sort of things, and I just get so passionate about supporting people in that journey, and they're the sort of candidates that I just think are going to really make a difference when we look into the future.
Yeah.
Because even like if I ask you boys, like Sean, David, like, we hear about AI and we know all about it, and we probably use, we're literally on a thing called podcastle.ai, right? So we're using it, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does 3 years look like? What's going to be the advance, and what's going to be out in 3 years?
That's the question I was going to. That's the thing, because everybody we get onto this podcast, we ask around what they see, and everybody talks about AI, but we're literally on the cusp of the biggest change in productivity that we've probably seen since the Industrial Revolution. You know what I mean, in terms of what's coming our way. But it's still hard to predict it, because I think it's going to change things so drastically. You're just going to see each year just things go in. But that's the thing, from a data and analytics perspective. Like, if you're looking at the next 3 years, what do you feel is like the things that's going to what's your predictions on what you're going to see?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sit on this, but people will listen to this and think this guy Graeme's a complete evangelist. Like, he's drank some Kool-Aid or something. He's off on one, right? But I genuinely believe, like, if we look at the future of data, like, we're going to get more data, right? So what that means is we're going to need to look for smarter ways on processing and analyzing this, which means more advanced ways, which fundamentally will lean into artificial-based intelligence to help us with that, right? So that's going to be a case. We're going to start seeing a real unique challenge here, which is the interaction between the employee, the human, and AI. And we're going to start to see that paradigm play out more, where we think about, well, where are the use cases for AI that are scalable and sustainable, and what does that mean for our employees and what they're working on, and how do we work together on that situation? That's going to fundamentally be a problem that we need to think about as teams, as employees of businesses, as business owners, as everything, right? So that's a big one that's going to play out, about really the interaction, the user experience, that sort of area. So I think for me, what that means from a data lens is that as we start to think about solutions that we take into businesses, or solutions that we develop for businesses through the topic of data analytics, and we're going to need to be thinking about speed to market on that. We're going to need to be able to develop faster. We're going to need to deploy faster. We're going to need to think about that feedback loop coming, saying, not quite right, we need an amendment. So that product thinking is going to come through more and more. And I think, like, really, I actually saw something the other day which I thought was really good. There's a Swedish, I think they're Swedish, they're Scandinavian, Swedish maybe, AI platform organization. The company's called Sana, and they had a summit the other day, and last week or something. And the first thing they had, the grand finale, 10, 9, all this big summit performance, and then the CEO walked out onto stage to welcome the summit, and right behind her, I think it was the CEO or something, right behind her had, like, the big words artificial intelligence, and intelligence scored out, and it said artificial chaos. And they're literally an AI platform organization, right? And I was like, and she made it, you should watch it. There's a YouTube video on it, and I think it's phenomenal. She paints the world really clearly, and it's a really, super cool message. But it's true, right? We need to control ourselves. We need to truly ask about all these new technology advancements, all the AI that's coming, like, really, how do they remain true to our business? Where can we actually scale them? What does that look like? Where does value get created, or is it just noise? We need to truly ask ourselves that. So I think what we'll see is there's going to be a lot more focus on data teams to be a lot more factual about value realization and truly returning that value into the business. So I think it's not going to just be about getting data into a central platform. It's not going to be, let's build out nice dashboards and some advanced analytical tools. we're going to really question where we drive business performance through data, I think. So that's going to be, I genuinely believe that's the next couple of years for us, and that's where I would be willing to put my money. Yeah, I think.
And you'll get that opportunity with Vector to do that sort of work as well. Yeah, that's what you feel like, and assemble a team. That's obviously you're going to be hiring people soon as well. So that's all part of the strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's another reason why I jumped on into the energy sector. I mean, coming out of consultancy again, I was really conscious about when I left consultancy to go back in house. I was really questioning about what the right time, what the right organization was, and when this all sort of unraveled and discussions were had, like I genuinely believe two things. I believe in the technology advancements that we've discussed, but then when I look across industry, where will we see the most advancement? And I think health will see a lot. We'll see amazing stuff coming out the health sector from AI and technology advancement. The other industry which we need to look, and people call it a problem, I look at it as an opportunity, glass half full sort of guy. I'm Glaswegian. But I just think that, the energy sector, like, we are fundamentally going to have electrification's here to stay. Like, we will be buying EVs one day, solar panels here to stay. Distribution energy is going to happen. We're not just going to be waiting for the big plants around the country to turn on and give us electricity. We're going to see a lot more distributed resources. We're going to see the advancements of battery performance. These are like, you fundamentally can look at the stories in the news and see these patterns coming out. And I think that over the next 20, 25 years, the energy system has to change to support that. And there's a lot of amazing people in this energy sector that are working on that. And they're truly trying to understand that and truly are trying to get a model and an operation that is secure, it's safe, it's super reliable. It allows you to wake up in the morning, David and Sean, and turn on your lights in New Zealand and know that the light comes on. Like, we need that. But we know that there's going to be a lot of focus on the load on that network purely because of electrification. So I genuinely believe, again, maybe I've drank the Kool-Aid, but I genuinely believe technology is going to be big. I think big changes in healthcare and huge changes in the energy system as a whole. And we at Vector are absolutely looking at that. And this team, my role, plays a significant part in moving us towards that future. Yeah. So it's a pretty amazing place to be. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Graeme. Well, look, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You gave us some really, really good insights, and I know our listeners and viewers are always interested in hearing about the backstory about how you came into data and analytics. That was a really good story as well. So, thanks very much for coming on the podcast, mate. It was an absolute pleasure.
Gents, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. I'm lucky we didn't go too fast, use too much slang words. If we had a couple of years in hand, there'd been a lot of people would be complaining they had no idea what we're saying.
Maybe we can do that next time, Graeme, on the next one. A live stream from the pub.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. But here, gents, in all seriousness, I very much appreciate the time. I hope there's some nuggets of, I wouldn't call it wisdom or whatever, but something that people can take away from this. And I think there's just such a huge opportunity in this whole sector is technology, digital, IT, data, everything. So all the best in your journeys as well. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great stuff. And just to our listeners and to our viewers, if you continue to like the content that we're sharing, please give us a subscribe on our YouTube channel and share or like our content on all the audio channels as well. We'll see you for the next one. Graeme, thanks again. Cheers, mate.
Awesome. Cheers, lads. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.